Hey everybody, my name is Ben and I want to welcome you to our first time sellers webinar. Thank you for joining us today. For anyone who tuned in last month for our first time buyers webinar, you'll certainly notice that this one is being run slightly differently. Just like many of you, we are currently practicing social distancing and working from our homes. Luckily, just like many of the great entrepreneurs like yourself in the Flippa community, being a technology-based business, we've been able to transition relatively seamlessly to the remote work lifestyle, and we're really excited to be gathered here today, if only virtually, with people from around the globe. Help you get started selling your business, give you some tips on how to get the most out of Flippa's platform and how to get the best value for your digital asset. You're going to be walked through the process by our CEO, Blake, and our head of product, Stefan, who are both not only well-versed in Flippa, as they're clearly key members of our team, but they have both bought and sold businesses on the platform themselves, so they really do understand the ins and outs of how to sell a digital asset on Flippa. Now, of course, we'll be posting this webinar along with additional blog content later next week, and we'll alert you when that happens. So feel free to take notes while Blake and Stefan run you through the process, but don't worry too much about jotting down every single detail, as you will be able to come back to this later. Now, also, if you do have any questions for us, please use the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window to send those through, and we'll do our absolute best to answer them for you right now, or if not, later on. So again, I do want to thank you very much for joining us today, and I'm now going to hand the video over to Blake. Blake, how you going?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Ben. Thanks very much. Ben, just give me the thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And welcome also Stefan, who is Flippa's Head of Product. First of all, thank you everyone for dialing in. What a weird and extraordinary time for all of us. We're no doubt all dialing in from our respective homes all over the world. You can certainly see Ben's gorgeous apartment there in Austin. Stefan is joining us from his home in Melbourne, Australia. And I am also not that far from Stefan, actually, just down the road in Melbourne, Australia also. So once again, thank you very much. We've got a wonderful session for you. This session is designed for our first-time sellers. The idea is that you learn a little bit more about the selling process, get some hints and tips from Stefan and I. We've both been through this process. So not only is Stefan the head of product here at Flippa, and not only am I the CEO, but we both are customers of Flippa. We've bought and sold. And so with that, that's a very, very good place to start. So very big welcome to you, Stefan. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining. I think a great place to start is, would you mind just telling the audience about your own selling experience on Flippa? Because you've lived and breathed it and you've had a good experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Stefan and I'm the head of product here at Flippa. And I joined Flippa last year, but prior to joining Flippa, I had sold a few websites of my own, including an e-commerce retailer of video games and accessories a few years ago. I had such a great experience selling on Flippa that last year I had the chance to join the team, and here I am today. But you know, I really understand the seller experience, and it's my job as head of product to really understand it. But I understand what it's like and you know what it means and what it takes to successfully sell your site for a great price. So today I'm going to give you some tips to do exactly that.
Fantastic, Stefan. Well, thank you. Must have been a wonderful experience selling your video games company. Just remind us all, what year was that?
That was in 2014.
2014. Fantastic. All right. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go through some hints and tips on getting the most out of the selling experience. Stefan's then going to jump into the platform. He's going to show you some real live examples of sellers who are selling right now that are doing a particularly good job. And then, of course, we'll wrap up. The session will go for about 50 minutes, but don't worry, I should say. We are recording the session and we'll have that out to you all very shortly. Stefan, take it away. I think you're going to kick off by asking me a couple of questions.
Yep, absolutely. So, you know, I think it's no secret, Blake, that we're living in interesting times right now. The effects of the COVID-19 virus are clearly on everyone's mind. And, you know, we're definitely seeing some interesting stuff here at Flippa. But despite all the headlines, the truth is it's not all doom and gloom. So Blake, can you tell everyone a little bit about, what sorts of trends we're seeing right now here at Flippa since this whole thing kind of began?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Look, it's an important one. We won't spend too much time on it. First and foremost, hope everyone's safe and healthy out there. Do obviously follow the guidelines, and we're confident we can all get through this. Here at Flippa, we obviously represent small business owners, digital business owners from all over the world. We've got over 50 countries represented on our platform, and that's on both the buyer and seller side. So we're very, very cognizant of how people are filling out in the ecosystem. What we wanted to make abundantly clear is that if you are in the business of selling an asset, there is very, very strong buyer demand on the platform. Now, what we'll admit is that a couple of weeks back, we did see a slight dip in buyer engagement, but that's picked right up over the last couple of weeks. So buyer demand is currently steady, and Flippa's always had outstanding buyer demand. We see over 5,500 new buyers. We've got 1.5 million active users browsing the platform each month, and over 10 million searches on any given month. And so there's lots of activity. So what are buyers looking for right now? First and foremost, they're typically looking to supplement income. Now, there's two types of buyers. There's the investor, and there's the be your own boss buyer, the person who wants to acquire something to run it. And that's this group. So they're looking to supplement income. And there's a new group right now entering the platform saying, what can I acquire right now, which will give me the opportunity to supplement my income and give me some protective tissue. The next thing we should point out is that some businesses are up and some businesses are down. And so it's clearly niche and industry dependent. And that means that right now you need to work the angles. If you have a fantastic asset in a particular industry, which is on a downward trend, you might want to consider whether the time is right now to sell. But on the flip side, we're seeing blogs and e-commerce businesses in certain industries, health and wellness, food, finance. These are all trending up very, very quickly, both at an e-commerce and content level or advertising level. And so think about the niche that you're operating in, and is it the perfect time or right time to sell? And we'll talk a little bit later about what buyers are actually looking for when they consider a digital asset. And then the other thing is to point out, and some people are pretty lucky out there, right? They've got solid disposable income. And so there are buyers out there right now with lots of money who are hunting, and they're hungry for deals. And so what we've been doing over the last couple of days is sending a lot of notes out to our selling community saying, guys, jump in now, because we're seeing really, really strong demand from a group of buyers who have very, very significant disposable income. So it's not doom and gloom. In fact, digital assets should be relatively immune from COVID-19.
I'll just add a few interesting trends we're seeing here on the product side. So, over the past week and a half, our top buyer searches on Flippa have been in order. Number one is news, right? So buyers are looking for any sort of news sites, content sites, news aggregators, blogs, for obvious reasons. Number two is Amazon. And that can be, Amazon FBA, that can be Amazon affiliate businesses. It's a broad term, but that one's number two. Number three is CBD. So that's obviously an interesting topic in its own right, but we've seen that as actually the number three related search in the past week and a half. And in terms of where things are going, so we've definitely seen a drop off in travel, right? So the demand for travel in general is down. We obviously think it'll come back up. We hope it will as fellow travelers, but right now that is definitely down a little bit. So that actually used to be the number one, and that has fallen. In its place, what is rising is anything related to health. And I think you mentioned this as well, but health, wellness, anything in that area is any queries. We're getting a lot of queries related to health and wellness right now. So if you do have a blog or a business that's, related to health and wellness or even fitness, now is a really good time. There's a lot of buyer intent out there.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Stefan. Let's move it on.
Excellent. So I think the big question, for potential sellers out there is, why should someone choose Flippa to begin with? Why choose Flippa over, say, a traditional business broker, for example?
Yeah, great question. And before I answer that, I'm going to address someone's question in the community right now. Someone had just asked, where do I get a Flippa t-shirt? So we're going to have a think about that, actually. If you send,
yeah.
let's put it this way. If you have a successful selling experience on Flippa, we'll consider sending you a Flippa t-shirt. So why sell on Flippa? Yeah, it's a great question. Look, first and foremost, and probably the biggest element of this is that we have the most buyers. So we've got a very, very strong history. We are the original, we are the biggest, and most buyers look at Flippa first. And so with 5,500 new buyers each month, there's a lot of demand. People are on the lookout for digital assets. And if you have them, there's no better place. I mentioned at the top of this webinar that we had extraordinary user engagement. And you can see there, 1.5 million users operating on the Flippa platform each month. And that translates to 10 million searches. And Stefan, you're going to talk about search a little bit later on and how that plays an impact here, but that's a big number. The other thing right now is that forget about COVID-19. Let's forget about that for the rest of the webinar because we've got bigger fish to fry right now. Buying a digital asset is hot right now. People are interested. So there's more demand than ever before and valuations are being pushed up. So if you're a seller, you're in a good position and Flippa makes that easy. We make it easy because it's a peer-to-peer platform. We make it easy because you can negotiate and we make it easy because you can safely transact using our integrated payment mechanisms. The second one is bang for buck, or the third one I should say, bang for buck. So our listing fees are low. Yes, we do have listing fees, but our listing fees are low and our success fees are best in market. Now, of course, you can go and list on some marketplaces which are free, but that's an entirely different proposition. They don't have the buyer base. You're not going to get the tools and the technology that you can access on Flippa. Our success fees are the best in market. And ultimately, there are three pretty good reasons why I think people should sell on Flippa.
Excellent. Okay, great. So I think probably one of the biggest areas of confusion when it comes to selling a digital asset is around the value of the digital assets. Because, this is a relatively new asset class in the world,
Yep.
and there's not as much historical performance data. So sellers are often confused. They're often misled into thinking that their site is worth less than it is. Now, this runs the gamut, but Blake, from a numbers standpoint, can you tell everyone what's the average multiple range for different types of digital assets?
Yep. The first thing I'll add here is that throughout this webinar, we will mostly focus on website assets and online businesses, content, e-commerce, and SaaS as examples. Now, that's not to say for all of those people listening in that you can't sell domains, apps, code bases, YouTube channels, anything you want that is a digital asset on Flippa. But for the purposes of the dialogue, just to make it simple for us to focus our content, we are focusing on online businesses and websites for the moment. And so the first thing I want to say is buyers look for opportunity, but they pay for performance. And that is a really, really critical point. We hear from lots of sellers, but my asset is worth more because of the great opportunity. That may be the case. Buyers will be interested in that. Buyers absolutely do look for opportunity, but they pay for performance. And so let's talk about that a little bit. In the content context, so you've got a blog, you've got an online magazine, you've got a review site where it's content driven. Typically that will be backed by either affiliate revenue or advertising revenue. Advertising could be AdSense, it could be sponsorships, it could be any other source of advertising. The average there is 1.95 times SDE, seller discretionary earnings. So let's stop and pause for a moment. What is seller discretionary earnings? Seller discretionary earnings is your net profit adjusted for non-carry forward costs. So as an example, one-time expenses are removed. Let's say, for argument's sake, you're an e-commerce owner or e-commerce business owner. Let's say that you paid a developer and a designer on a one-time basis to get you set up on eBay, on Amazon, on Walmart. Let's say that that is a one-time cost. It's non-carry forward. The buyer will not have to wear that cost ongoing. That's a non-carry forward cost. You remove it, and therefore your net profit line is adjusted, and that is called SDE. In addition, non-related business expenses, meals, entertainment, etc. And then finally, it's adjusted for your own salary. So one owner's salary can be removed for the purposes of presenting the performance of the business. So that's what we mean by SDE. So content, the average is 1.95 times SDE. Now, of course, there are anomalies. And you and I will talk a little bit about some great examples in a minute, Stefan. But yes, you do get some examples of where something is performing very, very well from a traffic standpoint, but maybe it hasn't been fully optimized for revenue just yet. And so buyers will be willing to pay a lot more for that. And so that's why you might get a 6 times SDE on occasion. But that is an edge case. It is an anomaly. E-commerce, similar, 1.85 times SDE. And then, of course, SaaS. SaaS is obviously exciting to a lot of buyers because of the recurring nature of the revenue stream. But note, what buyers will be assessing is the churn rate if you're running a SaaS business. Now, of course, Flippa accepts all of these assets. For SaaS, you've got an average of 2.7 times SDE. Now, there's a couple of notes at the bottom there as it relates to starter sites and starter apps. Of course, established apps also. Now, we will be sending this presentation out. People will all have access to that, so you can consume that content.
Excellent. You know, one of the things I really find fascinating about this space is how oftentimes digital assets are worth more than people realize. I know for myself, I was able to get a lot more from my e-commerce business than I ever thought possible. And it really took me by surprise. And even just a few weeks ago, I was having coffee with a friend here in Melbourne, back when we were allowed to go to coffee shops. And, you know, he had a SaaS business making about $100,000 a year in Australian dollars. And, you know, I said, have you ever considered, you know, selling it on Flippa? And he said, well, yeah, but I'd only get about 1x for that, right? And I said, no, not at all. You're looking at about 2.5x, right? And so, you know, it's just interesting. People don't realize how much that their businesses are worth. And it's also interesting that valuations are actually, they're starting to go up, right? Over the past few years, we've seen business valuations go up as more people realize the inherent value of digital assets. So bottom line is the time to sell is now.
Yeah.
Let's talk examples. So, you know, one of the things that we both love about, you know, working here is just seeing all the new, cool, unique businesses that people put up for sale. And, you know, especially seeing the delight on sellers' faces when they get that exit that they were hoping for.
Yeah.
So let's talk through some of the great examples of recent sales we've had here on Flippa, and, you know, what you like about them.
Yeah, thank you. Look, big thank you to the community because they do list some extraordinary assets, and we genuinely believe we represent the creators and makers of society. And it's really, really fun and exciting to see what they've been able to build and create as either full-time jobs or side hustles. And these are 3 great examples. Now, running left to right, we've got content through to SaaS. And so let's start off with Theatre Nerds. Now, these are all examples of recent sales on Flippa.
Did we have a freeze situation? Blake, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yep, go for it. All good.
Okay. Yeah, apologies, guys. Not sure what happened there, but one of the exciting things about working from home and being dependent on a home internet connection. Okay, so we have, let me get my screen back here. Apologies.
Yeah. We were talking about Theatre Nerds and Sally Hester and Watermark Kia, some great examples of businesses we've recently seen.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the reminder. Sorry about that, everyone. So Theatre Nerds is a content website. Now, it's about the theatre. The great thing about Theatre Nerds is it didn't actually need huge amounts of buyer engagement because they were lucky enough to find a interested buyer who was already in the theatre industry. Now, of course, that's a little bit like a needle in a haystack, but that's what they actually were able to discover, a passionate buyer on the Flippa platform. So it's a content site. It was making its money from a diverse revenue stream. So they did have AdSense revenue, but they also had affiliate revenue connected. And it's always nice to see a content website with diverse sources of revenue. Now let's talk a little bit about why this particular seller was selling, because this is an important thing and buyers often do want to know this. So when you're creating your listing, and Stefan will go through this in a moment, but be very transparent and candid about why you're selling. In this particular case, the seller was going on to do his MBA at Columbia University in New York City, and he obviously wanted to realize the value of what he'd created. And so he had some great success. So it was doing approximately $32,000 in seller discretionary earnings. It sold for $80,000. And so that is 2.5 times seller discretionary earnings. And so that's a really good result from a site which is in a niche, and the niche obviously being the theatre space. And so super interesting. Let's move on to e-commerce. This is a really, really great example. And I think the key thing is here, look at the 3 different websites on your screen and look at the difference in buyer views. And so what you can see here is that you don't actually need tens of thousands of views to get a sale like a Theatre Nerds. But with Flippa, the upside is that if you have something that's particularly well merchandised, and Stefan will talk about this in a moment, and you have something that is well priced, you will get lots of views. You will get 1,000+ views, or in the watermarquee example, which I'll provide in a minute, nearly 11,000 views. So Sally Hester, what did sallyhester.com do? So they sold smartwatches. Now, the really interesting thing about this listing is full disclosure. Now, what do I mean by full disclosure? What I mean is that what Sally Hester said on their listing was that their supply chain was impacted by COVID-19. Now, this is going back 45 days ago. 45 days ago, they were listing on Flippa. They sold on Flippa. They sold on Flippa being fully transparent about the impact to their supply chain. And that transparency stands out from the rest, and buyers like that. Now, how did it go? $45,000 SDE, sold for $50K. So that's a 1.1 times SDE. Now remember that what buyers are looking for is a return on their investment. They're not going to pay 10 times. They're not going to pay 15 times. What they're going to pay is a reasonable amount of money, which enables you to realize the value in what you created, and for them to go on and run this and get an ROI, which is, in this particular case, just over a year in length. Now that assumes that they don't optimize it further and it continues to perform at its current levels. Finally, watermarquee. This is one of my favorites, and we'll talk about why the SDE was 3 times in this particular case. One, it's a SaaS business. People like SaaS businesses. They can get some sense of the revenue performance of the business, regardless of seasonality. There was lots of opportunity. The design of watermarquee has changed substantially. The screenshot that you see on the right-hand side of your screen is not what watermarquee looked like originally. So the new buyer has gone and optimized that, and buyers could see that. The other thing that they could see was that commercially, this particular website hadn't been fully optimized. They were charging photographers a certain amount, and buyers could see that there was an opportunity to charge the customers of watermarquee a lot more and perhaps more frequently than watermarquee.com was charging at the time. So buyers love opportunity, but they pay for performance. In this particular case, it was also aged 8 years. Now, a domain, a business, and a brand which has age will attract attention from buyers and, generally speaking, get a slightly better valuation. And so take that into consideration. So how is it performing? $14,000 SDE, sold for $43,000. That's a 3 times SDE.
Excellent examples. Yeah, that water marquee one was certainly an interesting one. And these are really great examples. So great. With that said, I think what we can do now is kind of walk through some of the Flippa experience, if that works for you.
Yeah, I think Stefan, this is the more exciting of the session. So we're going to have a chat to you about the Flippa platform and how people can actually get the most out of the selling experience, position their listing so that it stands out, and also utilize some, I guess, growth hacks to ensure that they get views as best they can and optimize for that. So first and foremost, I'm new to Flippa. How do I get started?
Excellent. So I think before I get started, I just want to say that there's some great questions and answers coming in on the webinar. I'm actually going to try to proactively answer some of these in the next 10 minutes or so. If I don't get to your question, that's fine. We'll have time for questions at the end. All right, so getting started. So when you're ready to list, we actually recommend that the first thing you do is value your business using our Flippa's free valuation tool. So this is a free tool and it takes just 5 minutes. And this is going to give you a sense of basically how much your online asset or your business is worth and what an appropriate price range might be. Now, this tool doesn't spit out like an exact figure you should list for, exactly this much money, but it'll give you a good range, a good starting point, a good way to frame and think about your business and how much it might be worth in the market. So we basically just ask a few questions and you let us know your URL, your monetization strategy, how old your site is. Like you said, age is very important. Approximately, how much time you spend on it. And of course, the revenue. The revenue and the traffic are the 2 most important things that go into our valuation. So we'll give you an asking price range. And once you've got that range, you can go ahead and go to Flippa and start selling.
Thanks, Stefan. I think one of the things I just want to add there is that remember that is a range. We take into consideration your inputs, but there are other elements which go into a buyer deciding how much your business is worth. And so it's a really, really interesting thing to remember, because we often see that sellers will say to buyers, Flippa valued my business at X. So no, I will not accept what you have offered. Now, what Flippa has pointed out is that based on your inputs, based on an analysis of over 50,000 different assets sold on Flippa, this is approximately what your business could be worth. But ultimately, it's in the eye of the beholder. It is ultimately up to a buyer to decide how much they're willing to pay. Now, of course, you can decide at any given time whether you will accept that or you won't accept it.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, a business is just worth what someone's willing to pay for it. So we'll show you how to get the most for your business now. So, it's pretty straightforward. When you go to Flippa, you click Start Selling, you go down the funnel. Rather than take you through the listing process, the only thing I'll touch on real quickly is the difference between established businesses and starter businesses, or starter websites, as we call them. If you're kind of confused about where you fall in, it's a pretty simple rule. If your business is making money and it's more than 6 months old, it's an established business. And that's what we'll be focusing on today.
Fantastic.
So, excellent. Cool. So I think what I'd like to do is actually show some examples of some great listings that are live now. So
yeah, let's do that. I think you're going to show us a really interesting example, actually.
Yeah. So this first one is a business called Top Nail Fungus Treatment.
Can you say that one more time?
topnailfungustreatment.com.
Okay,
and
great.
This is interesting. This is a really cool business to use as an example. I'm going to talk about a lot of things with this business, but I want to kind of focus on the most important things that buyers look for.
Can we just talk about that image for a second?
Yeah. Well, an image is worth 1,000 words. And as a seller, it's your job to draw the user's attention, draw the buyer's attention away from other listings in the marketplace. And there's lots of ways to do that. And this is one of them. And frankly, I think they did a great job. Now it has nothing to do with toes or fungus, but maybe that's on purpose.
Yeah, can I just ask you a question? Do you recommend that people upload a screenshot of their website, a shot of a product, or what do you think about this? Should they just upload something which is relevant and exciting?
No, it's a great question. And, look, humans are visual creatures, and the image is what's going to grab the buyer's attention. And this is especially true with a new search experience we're rolling out very shortly, in the next few days, actually. This new search experience really emphasizes the image. And like I said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so to answer your question, your goal is to grab the buyer's eye, right? Grab their attention. And, a great photo can have a huge impact here. So while it is tempting to use a screenshot of your website, and oftentimes that works if it's a great screenshot, I would recommend actually just getting creative. Put your logo front and center instead. Have a nice, colorful, image with a person or something that the buyers can relate to, instead of just a screenshot. So screenshot will always work, but to really stand out, get creative, be bold, be colorful, and it'll have a great impact on the merchandising of your listing.
Okay, so now I want you to talk our audience through step by step. What are the things that buyers look for?
Absolutely. So look, the very first thing that buyers look for is financials, right? Show me the money. How much money is this website making? We know this from user studies. We know this from having been buyers ourselves. The first thing people look for is how much money is the site making, right? So this is, as a seller, we basically ask that you input your revenue and your expenses on a month-by-month basis for the most recent 12 months, right? Yep. So it's a pretty simple process, but the key isn't just declaring your revenue. The key is proving your revenue, right? And so there's a couple of ways to do that. The easiest way to do that is simply to upload attachments like crazy. Buyers love attachments, and attachments can be used to your advantage to prove that what you're claiming the site is making, the site is actually making. So what's a great example of an attachment? This listing has some fantastic attachments here. We've got monthly commissions. We've got a video walkthrough of earnings. It can be anything from a P&L statement or an extract from your Shopify dashboard, or your Amazon dashboard, or your Amazon affiliate earnings. Really, it's up to you. It's up to you as the seller to prove to the market that your claims and your financial claims that are shown on the listing page here in these nice, pretty graphs, that they're actually true. If you can have great financials and prove it through your attachments, you're in great shape.
And the other thing I'll add there is that buyers will ask for this stuff if you don't have it there. So it's not good enough to not be prepared and not have that information available at your fingertips to provide buyers when they inquire.
Absolutely. Look, your goal is to quell any potential buyer skepticism that they naturally have, right? And this is the best way to do that. So, so that's number one.
And number two, then, can you then talk a little bit about traffic and how that represents on the listing and why that's so critical for buyers?
Absolutely. So look, traffic is number two. Traffic is huge. We have made this really easy for you as a seller with our Google Analytics connector. So we integrate with Google Analytics, and if you use Google Analytics for your business, you can connect to Google Analytics in one click. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull in the last 12 months of traffic data, including uniques, page views, session duration, bounce rate, organic, direct, channels, countries, the whole 9 yards. And it puts it into this nice, pretty graph that shows up on the listing page. And after financials, I mean, this is number two for sure. This is what buyers are looking for. Frankly, it's gotten to the point now, because we've made this so easy, that if a listing doesn't have Google Analytics connected, buyers just they're not interested, right? Now, not every business has Google Analytics connected, and that's okay. But if you have it, you absolutely should use our one-click connector to get that data into the listing page, just like you see here.
Okay. Now I'll just add a quick footnote there. There will be some people listening in who are domainers, and of course you can sell a domain on Flippa. It's very, very simple to do, and that's why we're not spending as much time on domain merchandising right now. Similarly, for those people who are selling starter sites, we absolutely love you guys. You're the kind of lifeblood of the Flippa community. In most cases, you're going to be pre-revenue. In most cases, you're not going to have a traffic base. So that's okay. That's a different use case. What Stefan's talking about is a content site, an e-commerce site, a SaaS business, and or other established business. As he mentioned, that will typically mean 6 months and older and revenue generating. And so that's what Stefan's talking through right now.
Absolutely. And thanks for the clarification. And that's actually a great segue to the next point. And number 3, what buyers look for. And number 3 is the description, the seller's note, right? So this is your chance to tell your story. Now, we've already talked about how important an image is, but an image is really designed to grab the buyer's attention through search, through their browsing of the site. Once you have their attention, the description is really critical. This is your chance to tell the world what makes you unique. And in fact, we've seen that listings that have rich, complete descriptions like this one here, they actually have a 3.5 times higher chance of selling than listings that don't. So let's take a look at this listing. I mean, this is absolutely just perfect. This is exactly what you want to be doing. You want to describe the business. You want to talk about the monetization techniques, lay them out 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Talk about the traffic, talk about some of the stats, right? And how the site is ranking, major points to notice. I mean, this is really great information. How future buyers can easily scale up the revenue, what mistakes I've made. This is excellent. I mean, every business has a story, and it's your job to tell that story, the good and the bad. Buyers don't mind if you've made mistakes in the past. They actually want you to tell them what those were so they don't have to waste their time trying the same thing. So if you tried an Instagram campaign and it didn't work, let them know, right? Let them know how much you spent, let them know what sales you made and what you would do differently in the future, right?
Yeah, this is a great point, Stefan. Thank you for saying that. One of the things I want to make sure that our sellers listening in are well aware of is that transparency is key. And one of the questions we actively encourage buyers to ask is, are there any skeletons in the closet? And so if you have those skeletons in the closet, you're far better off disclosing. Buyers respect that. They want to know what it is about the business, which is fantastic. But equally, they also want to know about what it is about the business or the asset that is, or the website or the blog that is not as they might know. And so think about that. The other thing I want to quickly point out is that we do get some people who just fundamentally don't understand the importance of a very, very detailed, well-written description. And so some people will say, I sell jewelry. That's not a great description. Buyers want to know what jewelry, where does it come from? What is your best seller? What is the average order value? What are your margins? So think about all of that. And I think that, what Stefan's pointing out here on this particular listing, on our toenail fungus listing, is that the more information is better.
Absolutely. And, to your jewelry point, like what makes your jewelry unique, right? What makes you stand out in the marketplace? And, Blake and I have seen listings with just average numbers, average financials and okay traffic, but that have a great description, sell for far more than expected. Yeah. Conversely, we've seen fantastic businesses where the seller has put very little effort into that description, kind of hoping the numbers will speak for themselves. They sometimes somewhat do, but not always. So it really is in your best interest to write the best description that you can.
Right. Can you touch on pricing for us?
Absolutely. So price is the final kind of piece of the puzzle here. What is the business priced at? Now we have auctions and fixed price, and I'll briefly touch on the difference between those two. A fixed price is good if you know you want exactly this amount and nothing, less, or don't want to deal with the having to deal with bidders and auctions. Choose a fixed price. For most people, an auction is going to be your best bet. And the reason is simple. An auction helps drum up interest, right? It helps drum up excitement. And you can even get buyers to get into bidding wars like is clearly happening on this site right here, right now.
21 bids.
Yeah, and that's with 5 days left. And remember, most of the bidding happens in the last 2 or 3 days, even the last 2 or 3 hours, right? So this
That's
seller
an interesting point. And I sorry to interrupt you, mate, but I think you had a point to make about strategically positioning your auction to end on a certain date.
Yeah, we'll
day.
talk about that later. It's
Okay.
it's a little fun fact we have. We'll reveal that in a sec. In terms of the price, though, look, I mean, we have the valuation calculator, and we have a guide price during the listing process that will tell you if you're way over or way under. You know that generally it's between 1.5, 2.5 times seller discretionary earnings. But ultimately, you know, every business is different. Some businesses aren't making a lot of money, but their traffic is through the roof. There's value there, right? So that guide price is exactly that. It's a guide price. It's a starting point. Ultimately, you can list at the price that you want. Just all we recommend is be realistic. If you price it too high, you're going to scare people off. It's also going to erode the trust to some degree. So we recommend that you start a bit lower than you would want with an auction and drum up interest and have confidence that the market will help take it to the price that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think one of the key pieces around your advice there is the reasonableness of price. You want to use price as a lure. And so what you don't want to do is put a price up on the page, which is going to scare buyers off. We get it. That might be what you want to receive for your asset. But in reality, drum up some interest. See what buyers are interested in paying. Get some sense of how they value it. Because how you value it is important, but how they value it is just as important. And so use price as a lure to generate interest.
And that's exactly right. And you're going to want to generate the interest with the price, but you also need to keep the interest. And that brings me to number 5. How do you keep a listing interesting? How do you keep an auction interesting? Well, there's one easy, great way, and that is to just be active on your own listing. So that means 2 things. That means responding to buyers' private messages, private inquiries that you'll get through the auction. And number 2 is be really active on commenting on your listing. So buyers are going to leave comments. They're going to ask questions. They're going to question some of your numbers or all sorts of things. That's all great. You're going to want to be really active and answer these questions like this seller is absolutely doing here. And what's really key about this is that every single watcher of a listing gets notified whenever you comment on your listing, right? So there's 206 people currently watching this listing right now.
Yeah.
If someone asks a question and you answer, everyone who's watching the listing is going to see that. So you're going to want to use that power to your advantage to notify people of what's happening with the listing, keep them engaged, answer their questions. We cannot stress how critical this is. Being active and proactive is so important in terms of gaining buyers' trust, gaining their understanding and their learning of what's happening with the listing and answering their questions.
I just want to say this very, very simply. If you use the comment section and you owned this particular asset, 206 people just got notified via email. So this is how you can generate interest. If you have a particularly good day, drop the note in the comment section. If you've had a fantastic month, update everyone by way of the comment section, because this is what we call marketplace dynamics. This is where buyers are notified and will continue coming back to your listing to find out more. So use the tools that Flippa's given you. The other thing, Stefan, I just want to quickly address is we had one of the community members just ask, how long should an auction be? And of course, they can be any length that you deem appropriate for your sales effort. But do you have any tips or recommendations there?
Yeah, so it's interesting with auctions that the max you can do an auction is for 30 days, and there's really no reason not to do it for 30 days. But the key is no matter what your auction length, make sure that you're active and keeping people engaged during the whole auction process. So we do recommend the max, which is 30 days.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Now, Stefan, you may have tapped into this. Just let me know if you already have. I'm not sure you've touched on it just yet, but the verification of the actual seller, the seller profile and the importance of that. Do you want to just tap into that quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the ways you can really stand out in the marketplace. So you can see this seller here, Srijan. He's got all of the seller verifications complete. So that means he's verified his email address, he's verified his phone number, and he's verified his government ID. This obviously goes a really long way in terms of earning trust with the buyers. They know they can bid and place an offer with confidence. So on top of everything else we've gone over, make sure that you're verifying your account.
So that's really important, guys, because what we know is the buyers want to know who they're buying for. You think it's all about the asset. It's not all about the asset. It's all about who you are and how you run your asset. And that's a really important thing to recognize.
Absolutely. And you know, just like buyers are looking for someone they can trust to buy from, as a seller, you should actually be looking for someone you can trust to sell to. So let's talk a little bit about how to and when to accept an offer on the site.
Yep. Great.
So Flippa is going to notify you by email when you receive an inquiry. And you can access your messages from email or from the dashboard, and that's all fine. But it is tricky to know when to accept an offer. So as tempting as it is to accept, you know, a buy it now offer or the first offer you get if it's a fixed price or whatever it might be, we actually recommend that you take a deep breath, and as excited as you may be, you really want to get to know who the buyer is first. And the reason is pretty simple. You know, when you are, you know, you're going into business with this person, really. You're selling to someone. You want to make sure it's someone you're selling to, someone you can trust. So, you know, go to their buyer profile, understand how long they've been on Flippa. A lot of buyers are new, and that's fine. But never accept an offer without talking to the buyer first, right? Know a little bit about them. Make sure that they're trustworthy. Make sure that they're going to pay and pay on time. You know, you don't have to have a huge investigation here, but definitely communication is everything. And we really encourage you, as exciting as it may be when you get an offer, before you accept it, really understand who you're accepting it from, because you're about to spend some time dealing with this person, transferring assets and answering their questions.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And, you know, just to address the piece of make sure they're going to pay. I mean, ultimately, Flippa is there to protect and assist you. So if you take a deal off Flippa and give your assets to the buyer before they've paid, we can't protect you, and you shouldn't be doing that anyway. I'm not sure why you would ever provide your assets to someone before they've paid. Flippa's there to assist. So you can use PayPal for lower value assets, and you can use our inbuilt escrow.com integration for higher value assets. And we've also got other payment options. So if you happen to be in a market, a geography, which is not represented by PayPal or escrow.com, just let us know. Drop a little note to support@flippa.com and tell us where you are and the challenge you're having with our existing payment integrations, and we will come to the rescue and save you and provide you with some options.
Excellent. And so I think I'd love to kind of wrap up my piece with some cool selling tips that we have for you. So you had mentioned one of these earlier, Blake, in terms of timing your listing. So just a fun little tip here is Flippa's highest traffic is actually on Friday afternoons, US time, right? There's some interesting reasons for why that may be. I think people tend to kind of check out from work a little bit on Friday afternoon and start browsing Flippa, which, okay, great. But you can use that to your advantage. So you have the ability when you're creating your listing to, to time your listing and time when it ends. And if you can end it on a Friday afternoon in the US, you might find that the bidding war just gets a little bit higher and the interest is just a little bit more.
Yep. And look, we should quickly point out, just as it relates to that particular point, that assumes that you're selling as an auction. We do see a lot of higher value sites sell on a fixed price basis. Now, remember, when we say fixed price basis, that doesn't actually mean that the price you put on the screen is the price that you will accept or have to accept, or what buyers are willing to pay for it. But it just means that you're not subject to time. Instead, what you're doing is waiting for the best possible offer that you're willing to accept on the platform. And so that's the difference between auction and fixed price. And therefore, auction, you can control when you end, whereas fixed price, it's more indeterminate.
Excellent.
Undetermined, I should say.
Excellent. Absolutely. So the second cool tip is around commenting on your own listing. And we talked about this already, but I cannot stress how awesome it is to have 200 people be notified every time you say something. And one of the tips I like to do in selling is halfway through the listing, keep them engaged by uploading a new attachment, right? So if you are an e-commerce store, for example, and you just got a great big sale halfway through the auction while your auction is live, just let the world know about it. Be like, hey, everyone, I've just got a huge sale from a buyer. This is actually making my revenue higher, but don't worry, I'm not going to increase the price of the business. It's still for sale at this price, or the buy it now is still this price. Keep them engaged. Remember, buyers are looking at 5 or 6 different sites to purchase when they're looking to purchase a site. So
yeah.
You got to make sure that you not only catch their eye and give them a great listing with the description and image and everything we've talked about, but keep them engaged during the auction process. Excellent. And I think there's one more that I would love to say, and it's a new kind of program that we have here, but we've actually rolled out some really cool upgrades that you can purchase. And so I'm going to show you, we've got 3 different types of what we call boosts that you can purchase during the onboarding process, or the listing process, I should say. And these boosts vary in price range, but basically they all give you more visibility, more viewers. More viewers leads to more watchers leads to more bids and offers. So you're going to want to consider using these to your advantage. I especially recommend this ultimate boost here, which we've actually recently lowered the price to $495. What you get with this, for $495, you get social media promotion. Ben here is actually going to interview you and do a seller interview, and he's going to write up a story about you on our blog. We will promote your listing to our partner sites. We're also going to give you a homepage banner on flippa.com, meaning you're going to get thousands and thousands and thousands of views on your listing. We'll also feature you in our newsletter, which goes out to 300,000 people every single day, all for $495. So while you're creating a lot of work for our friend Ben, you're also going to really set yourself up for success with some of these upgrades here.
Stefan, one of the things I want to quickly touch on right now is these are great upgrades, but we've had quite a few questions from the community around Flippa's fees. And so this is obviously one aspect of Flippa's pricing structure, but let me just simplify this a little bit. There are 2 fees that relate to the Flippa sales experience. There is a listing fee. And if you are selling a domain, that's $10. If you're selling a starter site or an app, that's $15. If you're selling an established website, that's $49. And then, and you only pay that once, you can choose to upgrade and utilize some of the services that Stefan's just talked about, but you pay the listing fee once. So $49 for an established website. And then you pay in the event that you sell. So if you sell, you pay a variable success fee, and the success fee is dependent on the value of your sale. And so for most people, that's going to be 10%. So in this particular case, the toenail fungus treatment, it's currently at $16,910. Let's say for argument's sake, they end up selling for $20,000. They would pay a 10% success fee. That's $2,000. Now, as the value moves up and to the right, the success fees do actually decrease. And you can check those out. Just jump on flippa.com, hit the pricing tab. It's on the top right-hand side next to the start selling button. You click that there and you'll see all of that detail laid out for you.
Excellent. So I think that's great. We do have some time for questions. Do you kind of want to wrap up, kind of summarize some of the main points of this webinar for everyone, Blake?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Stefan. Really appreciate the work you did there. I think toenail fungus is now officially my favorite listing. I might go and put a bid in. And I think you did a really good job of presenting what people should do on a listing to get the most out of the selling experience. So firstly, we talked a little bit about valuations and why Flippa, and we spoke a little bit about the difference between content, e-commerce, and SaaS, but critically, we spoke about the importance of transparency, the importance of lots of information on your listing, and specifically objective detail. Now, what do we mean by objective detail? We mean that if you're an e-commerce business, how many units do you sell? What is your revenue? How has your revenue been impacted over the last few months, if at all? Is it growing? Is it declining? So all of the factual based information that you can drop into the listing to give buyers confidence. Stefan then spoke a lot about how you can present your listing. He spoke about the importance of financial detail, the importance of traffic. He went through a description. We spoke about not leaving any skeletons in the closet, be really, really transparent. We spoke about seller verification and ensuring that you've done everything you need to do to get the most out of the listing experience and help buyers understand what it is about your listing that should stand out. Now, I want to start with this question because I get it a lot. And the question I want to start with is, I have low views on my listing. How can I bump that up? Now, of course, you can look at upgrades. You can absolutely look at upgrades. But I want to give you some tips which won't cost you a cent. Now, I did write those down for myself, and now I'm fumbling over them, but I'll remember them. So the first one is, if you are not getting views, think about price. Are you willing to accept less than the price you currently have merchandise on your Flippa listing? If so, decrease it. Use price as a lure. Secondly, Stefan talked about the importance of seller verification. The number of sellers who don't do that is extraordinary, and buyers look for it, and Flippa looks for it. So if you wonder why you're not getting views, think about what information you've given buyers and Flippa to ensure that your listing starts to rise to the top. So go through that seller verification, verify your identification, verify your phone number. The third thing, if you have a very, very limited description, write a longer description because buyers look for it. Your views will start popping. If you have not used the comments section to announce to the world how your asset is performing, start doing that, because as Stefan said, everyone gets notified. So they're the things you can start to do to build up your views on Flippa. Alrighty, so any other questions? We've got a few. It says, did the Fungus site use a $450 promotion? I don't know. Stefan, did Mr. Fungus pay for a upgrade?
Yes, I believe so. I saw that one and I had to check while you were speaking just then. So I believe so. There are some other great questions in here. One I think is interesting. This is from Evelyn. My business sales were increasing consistently, but since COVID-19, they have gone down a little bit. Is it a bad time to sell on Flippa? I can take that one, or you can.
Yeah, look, let's both have a go. I mean, I think that critically buyers are looking for businesses which have consistent performance, but buyers are also quite resilient. Yeah. Buyers, smart buyers will recognize that in the event of a extreme case, and COVID-19 would be considered an extreme case, they will absolutely consider that. And I would price it at what you want to price it at. Of course, be reasonable, but I wouldn't let that scare you away from listing. Be transparent. Talk about how well your business has performed prior to COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a dip is completely expected right now. What you don't want to do is sell when you've had 6 straight months of decreasing sales, because that will definitely affect your valuation. So I would actually say, yeah, look, sell now. Absolutely. If you expect things to get worse, definitely sell now. But above all else, just be honest and be transparent. Tell the community, hey, we've seen a little dip due to the virus, as you can imagine. I've factored that into the pricing, etc.
Yep. Really great. I'll address this one quickly. As an Australian seller, and I actually don't think it's specific to Australian sellers, so I think it's a really good question. As an Australian seller, are there any peculiarities that purchasers from the USA are likely to want that we may not have in the ordinary course of business? It's a super good question. I guess the one thing I would point out is to think about the financial year. So in the case of an Australian business, people will often list their financial year performance. Now, of course, the financial in Australia is July 1 to June 30. What you're better off doing is talking about performance on a calendar year. And so talking in an American context, that's probably the one recommendation I would have for that particular seller. And then finally, from Victoria Sage, we have, and there is some questions related to COVID and domains there, so I'll address that one also. But Victoria Sage, are there any articles or quick trainings on the Flippa site for someone to learn about what template styles to use? I own approximately 400 domains, and it's time to put those to work for myself. Yeah, we see a lot of domain owners, great domain owners. They should be buying templates and starting to build some authority in those domains and building some content around those. Yeah, we will. What we'll do is when we send out the, let's just remind ourselves on this one, guys. When we send out the webinar, let's make sure we put in some tips and some links to our resources there where people can think about what templates are the best to buy if they do own domains. And certainly we've got some fantastic starter site sellers who would be excited to hear about Victoria's question there. There's some really good opportunities there. Finally, there's a question related to COVID-19 domains and being a good corporate citizen. So yes, we've got a list of those now, and we're working through those one by one. If we think that someone is profiting off COVID-19 with the use of a domain, we'll be reviewing that particular domain, we'll be reviewing that particular seller, and we'll be making a call on it one by one. The other thing I should note, however, is there are some established health and wellness websites which are selling on Flippa right now that have seen fantastic traffic growth off the back of really outstanding, credible content. And so we do need to review these one by one, because it's not a matter of simply blocking anyone who is selling a medical related website right now. And so we're reviewing those one by one.
Excellent.
Okay. I think that's great. We are just over time. We will wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Stefan, for being so detailed in your presentation today. Thank you, Ben, for putting this together. Thank you to all of you out there who have joined today. We'll obviously be sending this out. It's a tough time for everyone. We do genuinely hope that everyone is safe and well. Stay healthy, stay positive. Let us know if we can help out in any way, and take care, everyone.
Thank you, guys.